Molly Line, thank you. Well, North Carolina is going after electronic cigarette companies. State Attorney General Josh Stein filing lawsuits against 8 companies for allegedly targeting children with their marketing. This comes one day after Johnson & Johnson was found partly responsible for the opioid crisis in Oklahoma that also revolved around marketing. Let's bring in attorney Brian Rotella to talk about all of this. And the similarities, Brian, are pretty interesting between what we're seeing in Oklahoma and now this North Carolina suit. E-cigarettes, children, marketing. Is there a legal case to be made?
Well, good morning, Cheryl. And more than the similarities over the opioid case, I think what the best analogy here is the big tobacco, remember, from the 1990s. And what's missing here is we've got a lot about vaping devices. What we don't have is anyone that I've heard of blowing a whistle against the vaping companies. If you remember that movie from the late 90s, The Insider, and Jeffrey Wigand, played by Russell Crowe, that was a high-level person at Brown & Williamson who said, we knew that cigarettes were bad for people. We were in the business of delivering that. I haven't heard anything about that with vaping, which I think is going to make it a hard case.
Well, but we are seeing some injuries to children, and I believe one death. Let's move on to the corporate espionage, kind of talking about the insider and big tobacco. This Google employee, this former engineer, Anthony Lewandowski, he's now accused of stealing information from Google, giving it to Uber. How difficult are these cases to prove?
Well, they are hard to prove, and I have to tell you, as a lawyer that works for businesses, this is something that any of your small business owners out there have to be saying, ouch, because we all have our customers, our employees sign non-disclosure agreements. In this case, it looks like this high-level employee at Google downloaded before he left, I don't know, on a flash drive or something, the driverless vehicle information and then sold it to Uber. This is something that I think is going to have some legal traction, and I'll tell you, it looks like he's actually had some exposure criminally. I think small business owners that are trying to protect their secret sauce out there will actually be cheering for this if it does happen.
Well, yeah, and certainly you've got to understand from Google's perspective, that was a big loss in revenue for them when you're taking away that technology. Real quick, I do want to ask you about Jeffrey Epstein. Let's talk about what's happening in New Mexico. The state is now potentially going to go after the ranch. The ranch is actually that he owns there is part public lease from the state and then part private land. It's all mixed together. Does New Mexico have a chance here at getting back that land? How tough is that?
I think that, Cheryl, it's a great question. I think it's going to be hard to get the land back because it is a mix of, basically some type of witch's brew between the landlord issue and the lease issue. What I can tell you, what I think this land commissioner is really doing is discovery. There's 400 pages, and what she has put on the record, they think that they can identify other potential individuals that will be people of interest. And I think we can all agree the more people that have information about this gentleman, and I use that term very lightly with him, is good to ultimately get justice for the victims.
I did not think of that, but that is a very good point. We're going to have a lot more on this later on this morning. Thank you very much for that, Brian. We appreciate it. We do want to let all of